Welcome to the Freelance Journalism Podcast. I'm Katherine Reynolds Lewis, excited to bring you a special episode today, which was the keynote for our 2026 Freelance Journalism Conference at the Institute for Independent Journalists. Kavitha Cardoza was our live keynote speaker, and she had so much to say about independent journalism and her career. Like so many of us, it started with a layoff and really evolved to include coverage of so many important stories. She talked about her experience covering poverty, education, and immigrant communities, how she does that without being extractive. And we even get a glimpse of the prize call when she learned she had won the American Mosaic Journalism Prize. She talks about her process, and altogether, it's just such a humble, rich, and truly inspiring conversation in that I think any one of you will find something you can take from this and use in your journalism practice. So enjoy this episode with Kavitha Cardoza. Assistant Professor of Journalism at the University of Richmond and a longtime education and a journalist covering child welfare and our communities. She's covered children, education, health, and poverty for more than 2 decades as a contributor to NPR, the Hechinger Report, and her work has appeared many other places, including the Washington Post, Christian Science Monitor, the 19th, The Guardian, BBC World News, among others. I am a Washington, D.C. area resident, so I always am thrilled to hear her on our local NPR station, and she's been an education correspondent for PBS NewsHour Education Week, as well as working at the NPR affiliate in Illinois and being public editor at the Education Writers Association, another institution close to my heart. Kavitha, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Katherine. I have got so much from IIJ. I'm so thrilled to give back.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to start at the beginning. If you could sort of share your origin story, how you came to journalism, and then take us through the arc of your career and the different stages.
So I was born in England, grew up in India, and then came to the US as a grad student and then got a job and stayed here. I always thought, Katherine, I wanted to do a PhD. And so I thought, okay, I'll do journalism, and I wanted to research journalism. So I thought I won't have any credibility if I don't practice at least for 1 year as a journalist. And so I'll do that, and then I'll move and do my PhD. And in that 1 year, I got bitten by the journalism bug, and 26 years later, I still wake up every day so thrilled that I get to do what I do. Most of my career has been in public media. I've been in local public radio stations. Most of my career, I've freelanced with NPR, and then did television for a while, and then moved to print. So I enjoy doing it all. Yeah.
That's so funny. I wonder if we should do gallery view for this session. What do you guys think? So that you can see both of us. We'll try that for a little bit, and then we can always switch back. Because I'm like nodding and like, and you can't see me. So I have a similar. It's just so funny to me that you were just going to do this for 1 year, and decades later you're still engaged. And I think you and I first met when you had been starting to work as an independent journalist. Can you talk about that stage in your career? What was it like for you? How was it different from being on staff? And maybe some of the lessons learned.
Mm-hmm. So I will say it was very traumatic, Katherine, because I had not chosen it. Like a lot of people, I think, who might be watching. I got laid off Education Week, laid off all their video department. And I was one of the reporters then. And so it was just shocking to me, and at that time, like now, it's become much more common and people talk about it. But I remember everyone said, don't post, don't say you've been laid off. Like it was some personal shame. And that's how I kind of interpreted it. Even though I knew I had done nothing wrong, you just still carry that. And so I really didn't know what to do, which is part of the reason I'm so grateful to IIJ, because through the years, you started like a few years after I got laid off, but it was so helpful. Like for me, it was the start of the pandemic. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, you worry about money, you worry about like just everything. It's like jobs can feel very secure. And whatever is going on, you get paid, and then you're a freelancer, and suddenly it's like, oh my gosh. Um, and so it was kind of traumatic, I would say, in the beginning. And then as I grew more confident and I realized I can still do what I love, it's just it's different. Like right now I have to pitch and I have to make I was really lucky because there were very generous colleagues of mine who introduced me to publications like the Hechinger Report, who took freelance journalism pitches. NPR was great. So that was really, really helpful. And I would urge everyone who's here, to go to those sessions, to reach out to other people. Another thing that was very helpful was a small group of people, journalists I really admire, um, got together in a group of four, and we would meet and chat about pitches. And I think those small little subgroups are also super helpful. And so for the first few years, it was great. People needed freelancers. I was making more money than I did on staff. And then the last couple of years, I would say, as there've been more layoffs, as I could see the writing on the wall that, this industry is shrinking in some ways. And so that's part of the reason I now teach. I still am an independent journalist, but I teach.
Yeah. No, it's such a story that has so many elements in common. I started freelancing after a layoff and yeah, the small group of meeting every month and talking pitches or talking business, it was crucial to my success. So, everyone, please do come to the networking session tonight, 6 to 7. That is last year, a lot of people found accountability buddies, found group members in that format. So those colleagues are so valuable. And I think often we feel like, oh, it's the introductions to editors, obviously very, very important, but other colleagues see much more of what's happening in the marketplace. So, yeah, absolutely. When you think back over your career, Kavitha, what work are you most proud of, both from staff reporting, but also from your time as an independent journalist?
I think I'm really proud, Catherine, that I stuck with what I love. It didn't pay very well sometimes. It wasn't like, when I moved to DC, everyone wanted to cover power. And
Yeah.
actually, I covered journalism because I had gone out to report on a story. And when I came back, the news director said, oh, we just had a meeting and every beat was taken. And what was left? Oh, education. I was like, okay. That's
That's
how it works.
hysterical.
But everyone was like, oh, you're in Washington, D.C. Like, are you covering the House, the Senate, politics? And like, I really didn't want to do that. I was never attracted to power, never attracted to power, even though it plays a part in my stories. But I was really interested in poverty. Part of the reason was I grew up in India and you see poverty everywhere over there.
Yeah.
But when I came to the US, it was like so hidden. I always say, you have office cleaners who come at night, so you don't see them. You have people who clean your house who come when you're at work.
Mm,
You have McDonald's workers who wear this like nice uniform. We've sanitized poverty and we've hidden it, and it almost is like people don't want to acknowledge it here. And so I was really drawn to covering underserved and vulnerable populations in the US, and I really, really, I love doing it. I'm really grateful that they shared their stories, and I'm really proud, I think, that I stuck with it, even when it wasn't the topic du jour.
right, right. And it's so funny that you got the last straw, so you ended up education journalist, because often I do think, having covered education myself, it's seen as this sort of nice beat for women, right? To cover what the kiddies are doing.
Mm.
When if you think about the future of all of our communities and our society, right? If our children are not educated and they stay in poverty, especially kids who are in high poverty areas, that is our future. So why don't we care more about that as a beat?
Right. It has politics, it has you know, like politics, it's got research, it's got family dynamics, it's just got everything
Yeah.
enrolled into one beat. So I loved it, and I'm really happy
Yeah.
happy I was out on a story that day.
And tell, that's so funny. Sometimes they don't know what the opportunities are that they give us.
Right. I think I might have chosen environmental reporting or something like that, and this kind of gave me a little bit of a push.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And let's talk specifically about a couple of stories. I know you had mentioned your reporting in Alabama
mhm.
on the superintendent there, and tell us a little bit about, why it mattered to you to do that kind of reporting.
I think righting wrongs has become so important to me as time has gone on. In the beginning, it was like, oh, I want to be first. I want to inform my community and stuff. And now I feel with every stage, I've wanted to do longer, deeper kind of stories. And I feel like righting wrongs, and this seemed like such a reputational wrong. And I remember telling someone, so it was a story about a superintendent in a rural part of Alabama who was doing really, really good work for English learners. And there were several publications who had written about how like amazing he was. And I happened to be interviewing him for a different story. I wanted a quote, which I don't think I even used, but I said, I'd love to come and see what you're doing sometime. And he said, well, my contract wasn't renewed, which is another way of saying you were fired.
Yeah,
And so immediately it was like, one sec, something is off. And
yeah,
I told my editor if this guy had been in DC where I lived, he would have been made the Secretary of Education, and over here he's been fired. At the same time, as a journalist, you're like, okay, what has he done? Like, what am I going to uncover? Like some terrible thing he's done. And so I was very open to whatever it led to, but I felt like this needed to be out there for the community. They needed to be able to read what had happened. And so I'm always drawn to stories where people, like it's almost like they're an afterthought. So Puerto Rico, I don't speak Spanish. I don't have a connection to Puerto Rico, but there was just something about the people, the absolute joy and warmth that when I visited, I got from there. And every time I would look at listings, Puerto Rico was like, I mean, for many years, they didn't even collect information on
yeah,
Puerto Rico.
yeah,
And it was like, where is everyone? Like, why isn't everyone talking about what's happening in Puerto Rico? And so the education and the trauma and just showing like, Hurricane Maria might have been many years ago, but they're still dealing with the aftermath. And so I feel like I love going back to stories that have been done to say like, okay, what is the long tail of this? How does it show up? So one of the things I remember when I was a journalism student, one of my profs told me, always when you're doing a daily, I mean, a beat reporter or whatever, put it in your diary. Right, 1 year from whatever you're covering, and then
mm,
go back and check because oftentimes we cover the fanfare and the ribbon cutting. Well, and in Texas, I did a story when I was freelance, and it was a series about how Texas had decided they were going to eliminate poverty. This is total Texan style,
right?
like we're not gonna just futz about the edges. It's like we're going to eliminate it, and they had got millions of dollars, and they were like anything. They chose 100 people, and anything they needed, they were. And it turns out like not everyone was helped. It wasn't as big. Money doesn't solve
Right.
all the problems, but that gave me um, a really good insight into how this works. So I feel like choose topics. I think choose topics that you want to learn about. That's the amazing thing about being a journalist, and people will answer your questions.
Yeah.
So that was like I really like how did it turn out when the cameras went away and when everyone like what happened? I
Yeah.
love those kinds of
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah, and in that story in Alabama in particular, I think you make a very strong case because of the depth of reporting you did that, his being ousted as superintendent was rooted in this sort of very conflicted view of immigrants with this, increasing immigrant population because of, I think it was a poultry farm.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
and that was sort of the heart of he did too well for immigrant students and English
Right.
language
Right.
learners.
Someone said our school system is so welcoming to them, more and more of them are moving into our community.
Yeah,
So yes, yeah, that was like a tragedy. I'm so glad I got to do that story. So
yeah. You recently won the American Mosaic Journalism Prize. Congratulations.
thank you.
And for anyone who doesn't know, this is a $100,000 gift that you can't even apply for. You just get it. And I'm thinking of it as like the Oscar or the Pulitzer or something. Kavitha, like, tell me what was the moment like when you learned you won this prize, and how do you think it's going to affect your career or your trajectory?
Mhm. So I thought when the foundation reached out to me, I thought they wanted me to be on a panel or judge student awards. I'm often asked to do that, and I'm very happy to do it. And so I was like, but the call was like, the person Jorge started talking to me, and then we talked about my career and stuff, and I kept thinking like, when is
Right?
it going to
What's the
happen?
ask?
And then and then he said like, oh, have you heard about the Mosaic Prize? I said, no, I haven't. And he told me about it, and he said like, you've won. And I was just like, I remember like blank, and then I said, am I being pranked over here? Because I thought,
Oh.
oh, my sisters, I can totally see them like doing something like this. So, so I was just shocked. And then when he told me the amount, it was like, oh my goodness, like that's crazy. Um, so yes, it was awesome because I felt, Catherine, it was so validating. It's for a freelancer, which, as all of us know, is really hard. It's hard to be a freelancer. And it was for covering underserved communities. And so I felt like, oh my God, if there was a Venn diagram, like it overlapped with what I was interested in. So it felt very validating that, some people can say, like, oh, poverty is not important, or they should pull themselves up by their bootstraps, or,
Right.
whatever. But there are people who really care about this reporting. There are people who read it. There are like, and so it was really kind of validating to me. The money, I think it's been so long since I've set aside money for retirement and stuff. So it sounds super boring, but I think that's what's going to happen. I
Yeah.
think the good thing is that I just feel I have a cushion now,
Yeah.
and if there's something I want to report on, I mean, I can start. I can, I don't have to think like, oh, if only I had some money.
Right. You don't have to apply for the grant or wait. Yeah, that's
Until,
amazing.
yes, yes. So,
And I'd love to talk more about your reporting process because I was lucky enough to be part of the small group of education journalists who met. And it always struck me that you were investigating a lot of things and you had a lot of irons in the fire. But how do you think of sort of your process? Is it intuitive or do you have structure about what you're looking into reporting about? And then at what point it becomes a pitch or a story or a real thing?
mhm. That is like, yes, I wish I was more focused, Catherine.
It
Um,
works for you.
yeah.
Don't change a thing.
I think part of the challenge with freelancers is we don't know what's going to work, right?
Yeah,
Because you're like looking into something, we don't know whether there's going to be a story there, Whereas if you are on staff somewhere, you have that luxury of that time. And as freelancers, we're always thinking like, okay, I need to get on the next project. So I would say, in terms of stories, have always had a notebook where I have ideas and I write out ideas that I think would be great. Um, and then I feel like I kind of cast a maybe not wide net, but a kind of wide net to say like, okay, what am I interested in? Have I heard something from somewhere? Have I read something? I want to dig more. Oftentimes, you see one line or something and it's like, oh my God, I'd love to do more on that. And so, but by the time you make calls and stuff, so I usually do about 3 or 4 of those things simultaneously where I'm calling different people and stuff. When I decide on a topic and I've pitched it and like, then I can only work on one thing at a time because I feel like I really have to focus and go deep. Lots of journalists do it differently. I remember one freelancer I really admire said he's always reporting on one story and writing another story at the same time. So he's never like not reporting or writing. Other people do a little bit at a time. Some people only do one, but for me, usually it's like, I would say out of every 4 ideas, like one kind of works out. And so that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think everyone has their own rubric or method, and
Mhm.
you really have to just use we're all so different, right? So I have my own guideline of like, I do 10% of the reporting that I think it will take to do the whole story and then pitch, but it's all the guess, right? Because you don't really know how long it's going to
Right.
take. And I've gone back to stories, one of those 4 stories that didn't get picked, and then years later go back and, revive it. So I think having lots in your notebook to choose from, and then
Is
trusting
really
your
right.
expertise.
Right. I also think having good relationships with a few outlets is great
Yeah.
because, like, some stories I had, like, for example, Puerto Rico, I had a lot of statistics, like, to back up. But for Alabama, it was really just a kind of feeling. And luckily, I was working with my editor at the Hechinger Report, shout out to Caroline Preston, and she trusted
Yeah.
that there was something.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think some people also say if when you're a freelancer, have some corporate clients and then have your journalism clients, because your corporate clients will allow you to do what you love in journalism. And I was ne I always thought, oh, I should have corporate clients, but I just couldn't. I just never made it happen. I
Yeah.
didn't pitch. I didn't. But yes, whatever works for you and whatever process I think is the best.
Yeah. And it does seem like you've charted a course that's built a career that is somewhat intuitive, but I wonder if you can share what are your sort of goalposts or standards, or how do you define success for yourself as a journalist, and if that's changed over the years?
Um, I think I have to preface this, Caroline, by saying that, Catherine, by
That's okay. We were
saying,
just talking
sorry,
about
yes,
Carolyn.
by saying that one of the things that I realize, like I am very privileged in the sense I am married, and so I have someone who I get healthcare through. I'm not worried about not being able to pay my rent, and that I realize is a huge deal. Um, but otherwise, I think I have kind of been. I always say journalism is a way of life for me. It's not a career, right? And so I think I judge my success based on how I would judge my life. Like, am I speaking up for people who don't have that? Am I being kind? Am I being authentic and honest? And um, I don't know, I feel like success is very much to me, does my work hold up after many years? Like, if anything I said or did was on the front page of the newspaper, would I still, stand by it? And so I feel like it's almost like a way of life. The way I judge myself as a person and the goals I have for myself as a person are the same goals as I have for me as a journalist. Like it's too intertwined to.
Oh, that's beautiful. I just published an essay for Greater Good magazine by Jessica Leahy, who talks about making your life an argument, sort of living your life in that way. And that definitely speaks to me as well, that
Mhm.
it's hard to separate. So
Oh, I should
you're,
read it. That's super
yes,
interesting.
it's about how she decided to donate a kidney, and then that decision ended up saving her life. So,
Wow.
yeah, a huge act of altruism that ended up benefiting her, which is not
Mhm.
what she intended. But I digress.
No, I don't think it's digression. I feel like it's kind of part of the motto also of the freelance community and what I've learned from IIJ is journalists are really helpful with tips. Freelancers are super generous with their knowledge, with their time. And I feel like it's come back so many times. You know, when you do something, one of the things I've always admired about you, Katherine, is whenever you hear about funding or whenever you hear about, you share it with everyone, you know? I mean, some people might think like, oh, there's this great opportunity. I don't want every smart person I know applying for it. And you're just like, no, lifting each other up really, really makes a difference. So,
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. So we're both based in the DC area, and I've done some coverage in other areas, but you've done a lot of covering stories in, as we said, Alabama, Puerto Rico, Texas, and I'd love to talk about the practices that you rely on to find stories that really represent the truth for those communities and are not extractive, whether it's
mhm,
in your reporting or after the fact. What are some of your strategies?
yeah. It really, really kind of used to bug me as a child in India, where I would see reporters come and kind of either miss the story or think like, why aren't, or have, they would have their fixers or stringers do the reporting and then it would be their byline.
Mm,
So that would bother me. It also really bothered me when I was a local reporter and national reporters would come swoop in and like basically, yes, learn stuff from the local reporters writing and write something which got a lot more attention because they were at bigger outlets with more resources. So there are a few things I always do. One, I always make sure I cover poverty, and most times I know people I interview are not listening to public radio and not reading the outlets that I write for. So I always make sure I send it back. I always make sure like I meet them and I play it for them because a lot of them are looking at the data and so they don't want to like play it because it'll use up data. And so I play it on my phone. I feel like I keep in touch with the people who have helped get me
yeah.
in touch with those people. Um, I feel like I always explain what I'm doing and why um, it might help them or why, I want to do it. I always listen and ask, is there anything you want out of it? Sometimes they want to follow up and they don't know the process, like, for example, of contacting a lawmaker or writing to, and so then I help with that once the story is done. Um, Hechinger has this amazing thing where they translate their stories into Spanish, and I just love that. I also love that they work with local reporters. So it's not just like pitching the story to a national outlet, it's also working with a local outlet. So, for example, from the Alabama story, AL.com was like great. Um, so I feel like always there have been some cases where, when you're in a community as a local reporter, sometimes you don't get the information from the mayor or the superintendent. It's like they can blow you off, but someone comes from outside and it's like they have to give that information. And so I have been at places where I've seen, how they've blown off the local reporter, and I always email them and say, hey, this is what I got from the
Mm,
superintendent. Like, very happy to channel it back to them because it is their community.
yeah.
Um, and we always, I mean, I say Hechinger always says thanks to, whatever and gives our partners credit. So I think those kinds of things are really helpful. But I think being really transparent about what you're doing and why you're doing it is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's humbling to be a journalist who's really trying to practice ethically because I think it does require staying in conversation and being
It's
accountable.
a lot more work. It
It's a lot
really
more
is a
work.
lot more work.
Yeah.
But then when you think about how much they are putting into it, the time and the energy and for what,
Right.
And so I feel like we owe them that. And I feel like I wish that I want that to be more of I mean, I'm teaching now, so a journalism school, like that's what I teach. I hope that that gets baked into every journalist practice. That's just the way we do things.
Yeah. And I'm going to turn to the Q&A section. So if anyone has questions for Kavitha,
Yes.
and in two more questions, I'm going to be taking yours. So please do put those in the Q&A box. I would love to hear a bit more about this transition you recently made to join the University of Richmond, what that's been like for you, moving into academia and educating our next generation of journalists.
Some of it has been really surprising because, people at the university, at any university, they use words like embodied and
Right.
contested. And I'm like, oh my God. Takes me a beat to kind of. So, yes, I'm very comfortable among my journalism colleagues. But I love teaching. I've always loved teaching, and I've always been an adjunct teacher, at different universities. But every place, Katherine, wanted me to give up journalism in order to teach. And I thought, I didn't want to be one of these profs who tell 20 or 30-year-old war stories
Yep.
like, oh, during the Nixon administration. And I say even now when my students weren't even born during September 11th. So
Right.
it's like, oh my God, I have to keep current. I need to know when I'm editing them what it feels like, not just the memory of, like the feeling of what it's like to get an edit and have your paper come, your work come back. I also think it's helped a lot because it has helped me break down, some things I just do because I've been doing it for so long. And this time you break it down into tiny little bite-sized pieces. And I think that has really helped me kind of think, well, why do I do it this way? And is there a different way? And so I think I've got a lot more. I ask a lot more of my reporter colleagues, like, how do you do this? And so I feel like I'm constantly learning. I just love the idea that there are young people who are interested in journalism who feel the same way that I do, that, there'll always be a need for storytelling. It's as old as, you know, sitting around campfires
Yep.
as, you know, and um and also like to be honest and accurate and authentic, and there will never not be a place for that in our world. And so I'm really, really proud to work with young people.
Yeah. And I imagine you learn from them as well. I know when we have young people, editorial assistants, I learn a lot from them and how they're consuming news and media, and that shapes, what I think about as well.
Absolutely. So I'll give you an example. I mean, I've seen the stats, but I didn't realize how true it was till I asked my students, where do you get your news from? And every single student said TikTok or Instagram, right? And suddenly it really hit home to me like, oh yeah, I've seen the Pew Research studies for ages, but like this is true. And so suddenly it's like, I need to learn much more about social media because I feel like I'm one of those like the opposite of early adopters, like the super late, dragged by their kicking and screaming kind of person. And so I learn a lot more from them. I feel like I'm taking courses to learn more. It forces me to kind of keep up. And so, yes, it's love and their energy. I love being around young people and their energy and their, you just can't be jaded around them, I feel.
It's also really interesting what you said about you have to break down what you do by habit, because I think when you've been doing something for 20 years, right, you first of all forget how good you are because like all of the things that go into what you do are just second nature. And then also I always think I used to change beats every 3 or 4 years, and it was so helpful because I was always looking with fresh eyes. But when you've been covering something for, 15 years, you stop questioning.
Right.
And so that's, I think, another really
Right.
valuable thing.
Right. And you can fall into the trap of thinking you know the story, and you don't
Yeah.
because it comes around. Things are cyclical, they come around, but they're different.
Yeah.
And the people you're covering are different. And so I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, given this advent of TikTok and Instagram and also AI, right? Where a lot of publications aren't even getting click-throughs because AI readers are just, swiping off the top of it. Where do you see the opportunities right now in independent journalism?
I definitely think a lot is social media. And I feel like I really am a huge proponent. Like I was on a panel discussion a few months ago, Catherine, where another panelist said, we've done surveys, and journalism is kind of like a bad word. People don't want to say the word journalist,
Mm,
and people react badly when you say the word journalist. So it's like we say storyteller, and I'm like, I am very old school. I'm super proud to be a journalist, and I will never change that. I do think that we are ceding our space on social media to influencers, to storytellers, to people who don't do what we do, who don't follow the same ethics, who haven't had the same training. And I think it's just like, oh, we're going to do the print and they're going to take our work. And I just feel like, no, I really, really feel like everyone should know more about social media. Everyone should know more about how young people are consuming news. I feel like that was a huge regret I have, that it almost was like, oh yeah, whatever, this is a fad. And it's not. And I think the more you can reach young audiences, the more platforms you can tell your story. I mean, to me, I think I really made a mistake when I used to feel like networking is kind of code for promoting yourself. So I never wanted to do that. And I always thought like putting stuff you're doing on social media or whatever was like promoting yourself. And again,
yeah,
it was like, oh, I don't want to do that.
yeah.
And it's not. I think you're promoting your story. And if you want people to read it and your message to get across, then you just have to. I was thrilled to hear that you actually have a panel coming up, right?
Yes.
Way all I didn't mean to plug it, but I just think that that is something I will be watching
Yes,
because
tomorrow
I think
morning, 10 a.m., we're going to have a panel on creator journalists and building your own media platform because it's so accessible now.
it is, yeah. So I think definitely in that space, but also the way we do our work, fact checking, interviewing multiple people. Like, I mean, what we do is so valuable,
Yeah.
so valuable.
Yeah. Well, I would like to reclaim the word journalism as a positive. We'll try it. That can be one of our positives.
Absolutely.
I have a funny story along those lines. I was doing some reporting at a community mental health clinic in Santa Fe, and it was training. So they had an area with two-way glass where you could sit behind, and the counselors would give feedback to the counselors in training who were in the room with. It was like a child and family therapy setting, and I had been there for 2 or 3 days, and taking notes and asking questions. And I was sitting there with one of the clinicians, and we had gotten to be friendly. And she leaned over and she said, "By the way, you need to be careful because we're going to have a reporter here soon, so you want to watch out for what you say." And I was like, I think that's me.
It's me.
I think I'm the dreaded journalist who's going to be observing you. So,
Yeah, I feel it's like any stereotype, right? The more you meet people like that, the more you realize, oh, they're just people. One
right.
of the best things I've heard about stereotypes is partly true, wholly false. And I
Love
just
that.
love that saying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just feel like, yes, we need to demystify, dare I use an
Yes.
academic term,
And it also was
journalism.
it was a lesson for me. I'm like, I thought that I had explained to her at the beginning why I was sitting there and that this was going to end up in an article. And clearly I had not been thorough because she had no idea I was a journalist.
That means you are awesome at building rapport. They just trusted you instantly.
Maybe too good. And on that note, I always learn so much when I talk to people about the things they would redo or do differently. Can you share any mistakes you've made or even just setbacks in your career that you look back at and think, oh, that shaped who I am today or how I practice journalism now?
Um, I've made a ton of mistakes in the sense like how I, you know, maybe went around doing things, but I feel like I've always learned from them. And some of the things which I thought like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do things differently? Like, so for example, I have a friend who every 2 or 3 years she moved journalism jobs, and now she's got this amazing network across so many different places. And I was mostly like public radio, public television. And so I used to think like when I got laid off, I thought, oh, I wish I had moved more. Um, but I just feel like that's how it worked out for me. I had come to this country, I needed a green card, and so I stayed in one place. And I feel like I would never have known what it was like to live in small town, rural America, in Illinois, where I covered farmers and I covered um, things which I normally would have. Like, so I feel like I really learned from that. Sometimes I would think like, oh, I wish I had started at a bigger place, like I had started in DC or New York or something. And then when I came to New York, DC, I thought, oh my God, my experiences were invaluable. You can make mistakes and people are so thoughtful and forgiving when you kind of like are learning in a smaller place. And I've made such deep friendships. So I feel like one of the things I've learned is whatever you think is a negative or whatever you think, like I used to think, oh, I'm an immigrant. People are going to think I'm like weird and they won't know who I am asking questions. And then you take what you think is a negative for you and you turn it into your strength.
Yeah.
And I would feel when I interviewed someone, I would like straight away say, I'm from India. I really don't know how this works in the US. Like, can you explain? And I felt because I was upfront and honest about it, they would think like, oh, it's kind of like breaking it down for a student. They couldn't just say it and assumed I know. So they would really take trouble to explain it. And I feel like I got fabulous sound bites and fabulous explanations because they were willing to go that extra mile. So I feel whatever you have either been told or think is a negative, like turn that into your strength. And that will really, really help as a journalist.
100%. I love that. And I see in the chat, folks really appreciate that. When I was in a newsroom, I was too cheerful, friendly, positive. I wasn't like the hard-bitten, cynical, like I
Mhm.
had colleagues who were threatening their sources to get them to talk. And then when I went independent, that was suddenly an asset, and
Totally.
also with sources, but even with editors, people want to work with folks who are fun to work
Absolutely.
with. So,
Absolutely.
um,
Absolutely.
so I'm going to turn to some questions in the
Yes.
Q&A. Gary Chapman says, I appreciate both of our interior paint color choices. They do kind of match. We've got this sort of a slate, dark blue. My actual question for Kavitha, I'm a freelance journalist of about 10 years, and in the last year or two, I've felt like I did back at the start of my career trying to understand the landscape. There's been so much turnover, publications shuttering, freelance budgets shrunk that I don't even know who to pitch anymore. Would you be willing to share what's worked for you as far as initiating new relationships with editors or finding different publications to pitch after your go-tos are no longer there?
Um, so I would say one of the things is we are really good at when we need to speak to someone getting rejections, right? I mean, I used to think, oh, as a student, I did a man on the street, and that cured me of any kind of like ego I ever had. It's like, will you speak to me? No,
Right,
no, most people
right.
don't even want to talk to you, right? And so when you're interviewing for a story, I feel like I never take it personally when people say, "Oh, no, no, don't want to," I just move on. It's like, fine, I will find someone. But I feel what I found with myself, Gary, is when editors said no or a pitch went unanswered, oh, I would take that so personally.
Mm,
And I feel like one of the things you have to do is not take this personally, right? It's a numbers game. Keep telling yourself that you're just going to keep at it, right? And I would say, like, try and get into the habit of pitching or making new relationships when you are part of a community like IIJ. Like, some people know different people. And so it's like, oh, I can introduce this person to you, you introduce them. Like, expand your network that way. There are lots of people who have done presentations at IIJ, that I mean, this is not like a plug for, well, it kind of is, but I did reach out to them afterwards
Yeah.
and I said, hey, I've got an idea. And not all of them replied, not all of them wanted my pitches, but I just felt, just as there are many kind of places closing down, there are also a lot of places starting up. And so I feel like subscribe to lists anytime you see lists where there are some very generous people who have started compiling, like, this is where you can pitch, like, do that. Just sign up for those kinds of lists. Come back to all the places. Like, I cover education, so I'm part of the Education Reporters Association. But IRE, like, I mean, there are lots of places now. SPJ, there are lots of places like that do this. And just keep subscribing to lists and don't give up. Just tell yourself you're going to treat this like you do as a journalist.
Yeah.
Someone says no, move on.
Yeah, I like that. It definitely, you learn to develop a thick skin, reporting on the street and asking 20 people for a comment.
Right.
But I would say also the session we just had on AI tools was really helpful. I would recommend listening to that because they talked about even just finding editors' names and email addresses through AI. And we have so many sessions. We have 3 editor panels at this conference. So we've got at least 14 or 15 editors here, including Christina Samuels from the Hechinger Report, which I know has been really successful for you. So, to come to the sessions. We have so many success stories of folks who get assignments after the fact. And look for those new outlets. When I first was laid off and started freelancing, the Fiscal Times had just started, and new outlets need new writers, right? So it was a great way to get my foot in the door, and I had 2 or 3 assignments a month from them. And it really, made it possible for me to be successful. So smaller outlets and newer and local, right? Look, don't just try to go for the New York Times. I would say. The next question from Judy is, as a freelancer, did you travel to Alabama and Puerto Rico and other locations before you pitched your stories to the outlets, or did you wait until they approved your story ideas?
Oh gosh, I wish, Judy. I had no money to travel and no one was willing to pay for that. So it was definitely just phone calls till I kind of got my pitch together. I will say I had gone on vacation to Puerto Rico, so I had actually visited, and Alabama, not that particular community, but I had again been to Alabama on a different trip, but not to that community. So I feel like you can do that through phone calls. One of the great things about being a freelancer, which I really, really loved, was you learn to be really scrappy. I would hear like reporters from the Washington Post saying, I spend a month before I take out my notebook or my recorder. And it's just like, I don't have the time and I don't want a month to go by where I'm not like, I want to just keep at it. And so you learn to be scrappy. You learn to kind of be really quick, to think of faster ways to do stuff, so I just feel with a few phone calls, you could get a pitch together, and then when you go, and I always thought it would be much better for me. I'd rather spend one extra day on my reporting trip than do a pre-interview, because with radio, which I've done most of my career, they always say like once someone says it, they'll never say it the same way the second time. So the first time I get people on tape, I always want that to be the first experience because then you can feel it.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting. I'm curious, in Alabama in particular, you quote the mayor or no comment, the mayor from running into him on the street. How long did you spend there? And did you have like a photo array where you like learned who the key players were?
No, I kind of wish that I did when I was there. But I was there for about 4 or 5 days. I visited a lot of people. The mayor had a very distinct truck.
Ah,
And so someone had told me the color and the make, and I just kind of parked outside City Hall because I kind of knew he would show up at one time. So I remember I was like on the phone doing some other stuff, and then he came and I just walked up to him. And as soon as he realized who I was, because I had phoned him several times
yeah,
before that,
yeah.
um, He was just like, I'm busy. I was like, I followed him one question, I got him basically telling me to buzz off. So
Yeah. There's no substitute for showing up in person. I have had that as well, that experience as well. Yes, I think the advice I would just echo the pre-reporting to line up and make sure that that trip in person is as fruitful as possible is super crucial. I would never just go in and hope to get people. So.
Right. And also, if people are spending time with you, they want to know that it's kind of worth their time, or it surprises me how many people say they were interviewed and then don't know what happened to the story or where the story was published, or
Yeah. Have you ever had to rethink a story because of concerns about harm to the community that you were reporting on?
not harm to the community, but harm to the children. One of the, because I cover a lot of children. So one of the things when I think of harm to the community, you always balance. So for example, I'm thinking of Puerto Rico, or I did a series on children who are undocumented in public schools. And so you're always trying to balance giving something kind of like telling people about this and showing like why this is important and what the dynamics are. At the same time, you're like, well, if I elevate this, is it going, the wrong people going to kind of get
Yeah.
interested in it? And in Puerto Rico, I think it was like, well, if I talk about the trauma and you know, which was very real, um, am I kind of showing them as this like, sad, miserable community? And they are not. They are like fabulous and resilient and all of that. And so that is a balance. With children, sometimes you're like, well, do they completely understand what you're asking of them? Do their parents completely understand? Again, like the parents I interview are not often very media savvy. They don't realize a lot of times they think someone is interested in me. And if you're kind and reporters know how to build rapport, you have to constantly ask yourself, like, do they understand? So I usually always have an advocate, like someone who's introduced me to them, or someone who is an advocate for them, kind of be there so that they can. There was one story where the family had agreed to me it was about gun violence. And then they said that they didn't want the children's names used because they were worried about, the children being targets.
Yeah.
So yes, in those cases, absolutely. Like, first do no harm is absolutely the motto I go by, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Another question from the audience is, I'd love to know more about how Kavitha navigates conversations with sources about what they'd want out of her reporting. I love the practice. I'd like to learn more, CD says.
So one, recognize that what they want out of the process may not be what you're not on the same page. My job is to give information and to represent it as accurately as possible. And sometimes they think if you're friendly with them and you're asking them questions, you're going to say that the other people were terrible and they were right?
Yeah.
And so to like absolutely make clear that your role as a journalist is to kind of like follow the truth wherever, however, wherever it leads. And I always say that, but I do explain to them what my process is because many people have not been interviewed before. So I say how long approximately it will take. I tell them that I'll be calling for fact checks. Because sometimes when you call to fact check or someone says something and you call them back, they think, oh, you thought I was lying or something like that, right? So I always make that kind of thing clear. I always say, you're speaking to me now. Some people think, oh, it'll be on social media in an hour, right? No, this is a much longer process. And so I tell them I have to give it to my editor, then they ask questions, then I do a fact check, so I feel like I walk them through it, give them like a timeline, give them my cell number. So I say, you can contact me if you've got any questions. But like, even with the superintendent, he did not know what I had found. He did not know. Sometimes when I was doing a fact check, I asked him, but like he did not know. And I thought, yeah, I'm not working for him, you know.
Right.
So I feel like I am I think I also differentiate between people who are not used to being interviewed by the media and people who are, if you're like an everyday person. If you're a child versus an adult, if you're like there are different categories, obviously, but I feel like I kind of think to myself with regular people, like my mom, she's really smart, but she is not media savvy. And so she wouldn't understand the process. And am I explaining it to, the way I would hope someone would explain it to her? So I do, with children, I always think like they could be mine. So I
Yeah.
realize like I am not a parent. I'm not playing that role, like they need their own advocate, but I do want to treat them with respect, to not harm them anymore, to not make it a bad process. I always end interviews with something positive, having a laugh, like bring them back to the present day where it's like, there's so much, you have so much awesomeness. Like, we want to end with remembering and celebrating that. And so I feel like when I'm writing out my questions, I also like make sure that I have what I absolutely need to ask, but also the general order is like, how do I go from building rapport, asking tough questions, and then leading them out of that? Because you go away thinking, oh my gosh, I've got golden
Yeah.
stuff, and you're leaving someone like in tears,
Yeah.
thinking about their trauma, and you don't want that. I think the Dart Center, and now they're not called the Dart
Yeah, they have a
Center.
new name.
Yes, but trauma-informed reporting, like any kind of thing you can sign up to learn about trauma-informed reporting, I felt that was very helpful to me. Yeah, a lot of places have like tip sheets and information about like best practices, and I feel like, yeah, that those would be good resources.
I'll also give a plug for Anita Varma and Solidarity Journalism, which
Hmm,
is, and she has a new book coming out
hmm.
that's really about reporting in community yeah, one of the many people we've had on IIJ programs that I always learn from.
Okay, I've never heard of that.
Um,
Solidarity journalism.
yeah, I'll send you the link too. Anne asks, do you have any plans or desire to write a book about your reporting career?
Oh my gosh. I may start tearing up. I have absolutely, and no one wants it.
Yet.
Um, yeah, I did really want to write a book. I had a topic I thought was very like topical. It was important, and I found an agent and then sent it out to several publishers, and no one wanted. They were like,
Mhm.
it's too depressing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would love to write a book. That's one of the things like on my bucket
Okay.
list.
Well, look forward to that. And I mean, the book that I wrote, The Good News About Bad Behavior, was rejected before it was accepted. So I wish the same for you.
Thank you.
Um, we
And
have a
it grew
question.
out of an article,
Yes,
right?
it grew out of
So
an article
yes,
from Mother
yes,
Jones Magazine on the school to prison pipeline. Which also was a learning experience for me because the lead anecdote in the article, the mom of the little boy who was the lead anecdote, was very upset after the story came out. And, even though I had fact checked it and, she
right,
didn't, I don't really know the story, but I ended up having to then rethink the whole plans for the book because I wasn't going to use him again and talk about
right.
minimizing harm. I'm not going to just reuse material
Hmm.
that someone's already told me that they felt bad about. So
Right.
so we have a question from Valeria Fernandez, who was supposed to moderate this conversation and is healing and wanted to be here. And I said, you need to rest. So typically she is in the audience, and I hope resting as well. Thank you so much, Valeria, for everything you've done to support
Oh
my
my
work
gosh.
and Kavitha and this whole
Yes.
community of independent journalists. I know many folks at Palabra who learned a lot, including myself, from you.
Mhm.
So congratulations on winning the Mosaic Award. It's so
Thank
well
you.
deserved.
Thank you.
How is this impacting your reporting plans for the coming year?
I'm in the middle of, so I keep trying to kind of push myself a little bit more to do something a little more challenging. And I'm working on a historical kind of story now, which I have never done. And so that has been like very challenging, going to archives and interviewing people about something that happened like 50 years ago. I've never done that. So it's really, yeah, pushing me. Um, and yeah, and then we'll see. I'm usually like one one story, like now I'm deep in this, let's see.
That's
But
neat.
hopefully I'll keep reporting.
Okay, and Anne recommends self-publishing your book. We all want to read it.
Thank you, Anne.
Another question from Mariana. Kavitha, from an editorial lens, what's your process for identifying the right entry point into a new state or region that you're reporting on? Which data, local stakeholders, or community organizations you start with to uncover stories that are fresh and new?
Okay, let me make sure that I understand it. When you say entry point, it's like you have a vague idea, you want to cover this, and how do you so I think it's like whatever the kind of idea you have, right? If it's about schools, then I contact sometimes the PTA, like when I've wanted to. Sometimes if it's about health stuff and children, I did something on how teachers kind of have a bias towards, research has shown teachers have a bias towards children with obesity, and so their life outcomes are far worse and their grades and blah blah blah. And so then I reached out to, you know, hospitals, to health centers, to people I do a Facebook only when I'm trying to find someone,
Hmm.
social media, like, so I reach out to people. I cast my net very, very wide and see what happens. The only people I don't contact are like if it's accountability, and then I think I want to know everything, um, and have that, ask them like kind of at the end.
Right. The
So I
sort of
give,
official
right,
power holders. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I reach out to a lot of different people because I feel like it's like usually one callback out of 10 or something. I mean, I remember I was doing a story on, the Roe v. Wade thing had happened, and I wanted to I was doing something on pregnant and parenting teens, and I think it was 38 different nonprofits across the country. Like I had to call before one contacted me. Like it was just like they wouldn't call me back. They wouldn't, like, it was just like I sent email. In addition to that, I sent email, social media, blah, blah, blah. And it was like one. But all you need is one, right? All you need is one. So keep telling yourself that.
Another question, how do I find a story when I feel like all the newsroom journalists have already reported on it faster? I have ideas, but I don't know any sources, and it feels like I cannot work fast enough to get the story. I also work full time, I'm assuming non-journalism, and run a blog.
Mhm. Find a different angle. The story might be the same, right? Your angle can be different. Make sure your angle is smarter. It's better. Just because people work in the newsroom, it doesn't mean they have dibs on ideas. So I would always tell myself, I worked at a small public radio station in Illinois. And you had at that time, like there were a ton of reporters all over, like everyone was fully staffed. And I would tell myself, like, I have to find something like smarter.
Hmm.
So for example, I remember when everyone was doing stories on Muslim, I can't remember what had happened, but there were a lot of stories on Muslims. And I thought, like, yeah, everyone has gone to the local mosque, everyone has done, I need to find something different. And so I found an all Muslim Girl Scout troop. And I covered that. And I talked about the religion through that. Like they can't do s'mores because s'mores are made up of gelatin and that's a pork
Hmm.
byproduct. And so I feel like just tell yourself you are going to really push yourself for a smarter angle and a better angle. And yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. Um, Another question about universities, and it sounds like this person is interested in, as an independent journalist, being an guest lecturer or adjunct professor. How would you approach institution to bring forth the skills that an independent journalist might be able to contribute to the
Mhm.
classroom?
I would go to the head of the journalism department. Like usually, I mean, they're almost always, at least as far as I've seen, former journalists. And so immediately there's an ease, right? Like they know what you're doing, you know what they're doing, like there's a common understanding. So I would definitely reach out to them. There are a lot of places, like the way I got this job was I saw a job listing and I just applied. I didn't know
Yeah.
anyone. And so, and it was the same, I think, when I taught at Berkeley. I didn't know anyone. I just saw a job listing and I applied. So you can reach out to someone. You can see who teaches which courses. Oftentimes there's that. And if you have an expertise in that, you can ask, can I come and teach a class or can I be a guest speaker? And most, journalists are very happy to have you there. If you're a working journalist, they want students to
Yeah.
build their network and to. So I would say like all those different ways, and there are a lot of opportunities, I think, um, where you can reach out to different places. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Another question from Deborah. Thank you for your insightful talk. Can you share your top tips for pitching? Do you cast a wide net or do you hone in on one or two publications?
I usually do one or two publications, one because I've been like working with them, but also because I don't want someone to say yes and then you've sent it to three other
Right.
publications and if one of them says like it gets too messy. And usually I would have built up a relationship where they tell me pretty quickly yes or no.
Yeah.
And so I feel like send it to someone. You could send a follow-up email after a few days and then take it to someone. If you don't hear from them, you can take it to someone else. If it's too messy and I can't kind of balance many things at once, so I kind of the pitch, I read it out loud to make sure that it actually makes sense. And sometimes, like when I see writing, yes, it makes sense on the page. And then I read it out loud. It's like, what does this even mean? There's the journalism saying, like what your mother would say, explain it like you would to your mother. And I think, oh, my mom's so sweet. She would listen to anything I said. So I think I use the brother-in-law thing, or my brothers-in-law think I talk way too much. They're not interested. What would they say to this, and how would I like say it so that it's interesting, quick, short, like get to the point? Yeah, so I kind of feel so I kind of feel like I read it out loud. If you've got a friend, a partner, a neighbor, try it out. And when you see people's eyes glaze over, like that's the point at which you're like, okay, you've lost them. Like watch them as you're telling the story. So I think a lot of times it's just like, okay, I almost think of it like a dinner party, right? You're at a dinner party, there's lots of people talking, there's a lot going on. You want to say, like, tell an anecdote, but you don't have a lot of time. Um, how are you going to do it in the best way so that their eyes don't glaze over? And so, yeah, think of it like that. And practice. I sometimes practice because sometimes, they want to talk to you on the phone. And so I practice. When I came, this is something I tell my students. When I came from India, we didn't have voicemail. Right. So I was not at all used to like leaving a voicemail. That to me was really weird.
Hmm.
And I just used to practice in front of the mirror, like, "Hi, I'm Kavitha Cardoza. I'm with this. This is what." And it used to sound so terrible, but over time I practiced and I got better. So when people say to me, "Oh, I'm really bad at speaking to the media. I can't form it's just practice." So pitches are just practice. That's
Yeah.
it.
And I would think, especially if you're writing long form narrative or accountability journalism, your pitches are longer and you're going to invest so much in the editor relationships you wouldn't simultaneously pitch. But folks who are more sort of off the news or something more timely, I know folks who do simultaneously pitch and sort of cast a wide net. I think it just depends on the kind of reporting you're doing. A couple more questions I'm going to try and get in before we end in 3 minutes. At what point do you contact the sort of official powers if you're doing accountability reporting, whether that's the comms department or at a school or an agency?
I want to be fair. Like, I don't automatically think they're the bad people. They need an opportunity to comment. What I do is give them enough time. Usually it's a week or longer. But after that, it's also like I'm doing a fact check simultaneously. I'm maybe sometimes refining. Sometimes they write back with like a ton of questions, like in the case of Alabama. And then those things had to be checked out because they said all kinds of things. And then I had to see, and they turned out to be untrue.
Yeah.
But I give them enough time. I never want to feel that someone feels like I kind of screwed them over because it is their name and print, right?
Yeah. As someone just starting with freelance work, how would you recommend beginning? Getting to know publications, pitching, getting your name out?
I think have confidence you can do it and that people want to read what you are writing or saying or, start small. There are a lot of publications which ask for 300-400 words. Start small, gain confidence, keep networking, and feel part of this community or make your own community within this larger group so that you feel like someone's got your back. Because there will be many days when things don't go right and you are like, why on earth am I doing this? And you need someone to vent to who understands,
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, Kavitha Cardoza, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I learned more about you, and I really appreciated you sharing the time with us today. The Freelance Journalism Podcast is a production of the Institute for Independent Journalists. Our mission is the emotional and financial sustainability of freelancers of color. Learn more about our work at theiij.com and use the code POD10 for a discount on our annual conference and other events open for registration now. That's POD number 10. And please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or both. You can find our free webinars and other offerings on YouTube. And your recommendation and sharing with friends is the greatest compliment and helps us discover new listeners. Thanks for listening.